because you're seeing the others. And another friend just only yesterday, I can't believe it, sent me a message from Greenpeace, and I know you're talking about land issues, so I won't go too much into the fish aspect, but it said that in March the UN agreed Global Ocean Treaty, and the biggest conservation win over to protect 30% of our oceans by 2030. Only 3% is protected at present, and it will take decades of campaigning. And I thought, it's too late. We're leaving everything much too late, and there's too many people on this planet. I'm sorry, I'm being very negative, but I just feel we've got to work hard for our own children and grandchildren to follow. Anyway, that's my piece.
Can I just ask you, say you've got lots of vegetarian friends. I mean, would you say you're in a sort of vegetarian bubble of like-minded vegetarian people who all
maybe I meet people that when you get into discussions, you find, oh, I'm vegetarian. I didn't realize my husband's half brother until I went to his wedding, and everything was vegetarian out. His third wedding, mind you. Everything on the tables was vegetarian. He said, I didn't know you were vegetarian. Yes, and my new wife is, and it's growing. It's really growing, so I'm thrilled in my own heart that is mindsets are changing now.
Okay. Who wants to go next? Who would like to? Kate?
Hi, okay, so focusing on what we want from the outcome of this is, what are we going to do in Wiltshire to campaign around a land use issue? I can talk about how I personally have cut down my meat use and have become much more vegetarian. Being a doctor, I've done the Zoe trial, and I'm now well aware, as I wasn't as a medical student, just what the impact of our diet is on our health. So I'll leave that for the moment. But one of the things about eating meat is that you do get a nice big concentrated bolus of the very rare elements like molybdenum, selenium, zinc, etc., which is very difficult to do from a vegetarian diet. So that I'll just park it there. But I have become much more vegetarian. My other campaign I'm doing is trying to reduce my plastic, and the majority of my plastic comes from vegetables at the moment, which is just mad. And that brings me on to this idea of yours, Claire, which is about eating local. And one of the things that distresses me most about Wiltshire is, even though we are an incredibly rural agricultural land, I, as a consumer, feel completely detached from my farmers. I don't know who my farmers are. I don't know who they are as neighbours. Between me and my farmers is a huge supply chain of grain merchants, food processors, supermarkets, all of which are optimizing the use of their resources, which ends up with a diet that's being sold to me, which is actually extremely unhealthy. So that is what I would like to campaign to change.
So when you say you'd like to campaign to change it, is that because obviously we're trying to think around things we can do practically. So one of the things that comes from that would be finding out where your local suppliers are. I mean,
that's
literally,
right.
So put people to well, horticulturalists. That's my particular.
Well, that's right. There are very few horticulturists in Wiltshire. So for us in East Pewsey, there are 3 farming networks, and amazing stuff going on. We've got one of the oldest organic commercial growers in Wiltshire. But I don't know them, and they have become, quite rightly, I think, they're extremely busy, but also extremely defensive, because they are so worried by this whole anti-wokery, and they're kind of seen as being, the naughty boys in the system, and they're not. They are just in the system as we are, and it's how do we change that system? So starting those conversations is one of the things that I'm very keen to do, and I think a lot of people living in Wiltshire are in the same position. They would love to be in more direct contact with their farmers and get to know them on a how can we help you to help us to help you basis, like supporting farm shops, etc. So I'll leave it at that. So thank you.
Andrew, put your hand up.
I don't want to have a whole go because I've said a few things and I think a lot of people know where I stand, which is to reduce livestock methane emissions. But I just wanted to explore
Can I just interrupt you there, Andrew? One thing I was going to remind everybody was of last month's meeting where we had the extracts from your talk, Andrew, which was July, I think.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
if you go back on the WCA Land Use topic group, you can look at Andrew's talk and also the talk, the policy tracker talk
Right.
from the Green Alliance lady, as to how way off the country is in
Right.
terms of agricultural land use policy. Sorry, Andrew, just
after
to
what
remind
Kate
people
said,
that
which
it could be looked at.
okay, after what Kate said, which was interesting and valid, I just wanted to explore a little bit, Kate or anyone else, maybe sometime in the meeting, what's your theory, or what are people's theory about eating local? Because the surprisingly and counterintuitively, the food miles impact of eating local as opposed to food that's been come from a long way isn't necessarily lower than the impact of this distant food. If it is, it may be an extremely small part of its total greenhouse gas footprint. There are other reasons for eating local that aren't climate reasons. Community, being connected with, feeling connected with your local food producers, convenience, flavor, social reasons. So I think eating local wants to be unpicked. I'm aware that both Tradecraft and Oxfam made representations to a parliamentary group a number of years ago against the government promoting the concept of food miles. And the concept of food miles does help farmers as businesses to promote themselves. It's not necessarily closely connected with helping to tackle the climate emergency. So I'm interested in what people's theories about eating local might be.
I agree with you, Andrew. I think I'll just come back up with that. The whole concept around food miles is extremely tricky. So I think the person who has the best measurement of this and has may probably influenced my thinking most is Mike Berners-Lee. How bad are bananas? Well, bananas compared to avocado pears are much better. They come by sea, etc. But you eat an avocado pear, the food miles and the climate impact is absolutely horrific. So they're grown in countries with very short water, they require a lot of water, and they have to be flown in so they're fresh. So this is a highly nuanced thing that needs a lot of education behind it. But my whole reason for thinking about connecting me to my local food chain is why bloody hell do I need to eat avocados? They're a South American fruit. Why is it that I can't actually buy horticulturally grown vegetables in Wiltshire? All our farmers' markets in Devizes, Salisbury, Hungerford, and Marlborough are all brought in from London. They come in from the old Covent Garden market system. They travel right across the country and they sell their produce in our local markets. I've only ever met one local market stall. So that's back to being connected with our food, understanding where it comes from, teaching these concepts, being part of the community, understanding how what you eat impacts your soil. It's all of that. I'm part of the system, a bigger system, and that's what I would like to get back to. So I must stop because I'm finding myself getting wound up again and I need to shut up.
Okay, right. So anybody else like to say their sort of stuff? Yeah.
As I just put in the chat, really, and welcome to Bill. I was just going to sort of catch up as well with where we are. So you did a bit of an introduction, and then we were just sort of talking about our sort of initial positions, really, before we sort of started the debate. So I think we haven't got to item 3, which we haven't read out those questions, which I thought were really well phrased. Because there's such a small number, we might not go into a breakout group, I guess. But I just wanted to remind people where we are. So I think probably we're just sort of introducing our positions now, and then we'll do the debate. Is that the way you intended it, Claire?
Yes. And then the debate is more about what we want to do can we get to some point where there's some focus to work rather than just exchanging our information and our concerns? Yeah.
Exactly.
So I'm conscious Andrew's got to go at some point, but anyway. But anybody else like to? Yeah. So I think in a nutshell, Julian is telling us to keep it brief, or succinct, or focused. Jackie, got your hand up. Where are you coming from?
So I well, I try and eat the most climate friendly diet that I can. Before I started having children, I was going towards being vegan, and then I got pregnant and I felt like I needed more to not be restricting myself, I suppose, because I could barely bear to eat anything, and I didn't want to just eat bread if all I could manage was bread and cheese. So I sort of now I eat pescatarian, and I'm also trying to raise my children in a similar way, but I find it quite difficult. I worry that so I've got a 2-year-old daughter and the baby. I worry my daughter's not getting enough iron, protein, and she probably is fine, but I have a lot of concerns about what small children eat anywhere. There's a lot of crappy food out there, a lot of really highly processed food focused on children, and I think it's something that I really want to fight back against. And then that's sort of my personal angle, and then in a professional sense I work for Waitrose on climate change, and so it's sort of my job to try and encourage people to eat more sustainably. And what I've learned from that is
Sorry, Jackie, I don't know if everybody's the same, but
tell people what to eat.
I'm having a bit of problem hearing you. Can everybody else hear you?
Oh, you lost me. Oh, sorry, my internet's a bit rubbish.
Okay, you just broke up for the last second or so, Jackie.
Oh no, am I back?
Sorry, the last sentence, I mean.
Am I back in the room? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just saying, so I work for a supermarket trying to convince people to eat more sustainably, and it's just very hard. And I think everybody in every part of the food chain thinks there's nothing I can do. So all the suppliers say it's nothing, it's not really up to me what people eat. And then we say that as a supermarket, and then people in the, charities and people in the community say there's nothing they can do. And it's, yeah, so I'm kind of always looking for inspiration on that as well. What can all the different parts of the supply chain actually do? If we've put vegan stuff in our shops and it doesn't sell, and then we can't kind of afford to keep it on the shelves, or that's the story I get told, because no one's buying it. But I think it's a bit of a vicious circle. So yeah, just looking for.
Where's that coming from? It's a background joke there.
Sorry, there's a lot of shouting in my house. Is everybody hearing that?
Oh, right.
Sorry. I'll shut the door. So if you think you're hearing Russian, yeah, you are. Right. Sorry about that. Right, who's next? Tony?
Okay, well, I guess I'm in the camp. I still eat meat. I would go more, I would eat less, I think, if my wife was not so convinced herself that actually she needs to have meat because of her metabolism. But I think it's a hugely complex area, enormously complex, especially when you start thinking about the health issues around the processing involved. And I think things, for instance, the meat substitutes seem to be highly processed. The alternatives that involve a lot of processing, which I think could have health impact. Well, they're finding health impacts, but I think I think a bit like Kate and some of the others. I think I'm also interested in the impact of food in terms of the landscape and the culture we have around us. I'm very interested in, particularly, for instance, where we're in the Clay Vale. and above us we have the chalk. So we have two different different systems of farming, which generally relate to the sort of quality of the soil. So I'm surrounded by dairy farms, and generally on clay, they're good for trees, but they're good for grass as well. So I think we need to have a think about that. And also what, for the farmers who are here raising the dairy cattle, what would their alternative be for them as a livelihood? So that's something I want to throw in there. But personally, I'm reducing, a lot the meat I consume. I still like dairy and cheese, and I think that's for lots of reasons, but cultural partly for taste. And I think we mustn't underestimate the identification people have with their diets. It is a very strong cultural issue. So I think that's why we get a lot of resistance from people to changing diets because of that. And that's not just restricted to this country, it's the world over. Foods very much are part of people's nationality and identity. So we need to take that carefully into account. But I think the messages we need to get across is about information and clear information as well, because it is a very complex and changing field. This whole thing around fats being problematic back, 40 years ago, and now they're revising that, what that actually means. And obviously with things like microplastics and stuff now coming into all food sources, does change the scene. So I think we need to be conscious of how that is not a sort of blanket picture around food.
Okay, thank you, Tony. Who haven't we heard from? Bill?
I was late. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
It was interesting to listen to the last few people, particularly Jackie. I think I'm personally still a white and meat eater and fish at the moment, but I don't have any dairy at all. So I'm sort of moved slightly to the less meat. Well, probably a lot to the less meat side, because we have at least 2 non-meat in any sort meals a week. But that's a personal thing, and I'm interested in what Jackie was saying, because what you have, Jackie, is an incredible view from where you're sitting, because you as a young mother are trying to make sure your children get fed adequately and get the right proteins and everything else. You're also sitting in a supermarket where you're trying to sell more sustainable. You personally are responsible for trying to sell this more sustainable food, but you're getting the feedback from your company that actually it's not. So it's to do, obviously it's to do with money, because profit is what makes companies work, and if it doesn't make a profit, then they won't do it. And so there's a question: do you leave it there waiting for people to buy it and hoping that actually the market will build, or do you completely take it off the shelf and then there is no choice at all in the market? And I know that, I think the first time around you said it was Waitrose. I mean, I know Waitrose have actually reduced the amount of vegan stuff on the shelves of my local supermarket, and I'd wondered why, and other things which I almost took for granted that they would supply, like pomegranate juice, and I understand there's a market issue there, and I just don't know how to break that. I don't know how we're going to break that mold, because the supermarkets will not sell it unless it makes money. And they may try it for a while and decide it doesn't make money. And how long do you leave it before you decide it's not making money and never will? I don't know. And that's it's whether they're prepared to support the thing long term or not. And how do we convince them that it's a good idea to support those things long term? So it's a really challenging thing. I have to say, the only thing that I think is highly processed, I have vegan cheese, and I don't know how it's made, but some of the cheeses I have that's vegan are really tasty. But I don't know whether they are ultra processed foods. I don't know, because I haven't investigated their manufacture. And
Can I just give a guide? Interrupt. Give a guide to look on the packet, and the guide is if it's got things in that aren't in your kitchen cupboard or you never heard of, then it's ultra processed. That's how you know.
Well, everything I eat must be ultra processed. But I think it comes back to where do we start to change that mindset? And it's Tony said, it's worldwide. It's our culture. We, the UK, roast beef and whatever. That's we're known as beef people because that's British people were. So I'm interested to hear lots of ideas of how we might change it, but I'm struggling to think of one myself. Normally I can think of a route forward, but this incredibly difficult subject. Well, I agree with Andrew in that there's a lot of methane issued from cars, but there are 9 billion people on the planet who issue methane too. So and there's more methane issued from Kazakhstan and wherever the other places that is methane than the rest of the world put together. So we need to tackle the root causes of methane, and one of them is cattle. One of them is our meat products, and the other is people drilling holes in the ground. Almost the second
Bill.
one is easier to deal with than the first one. But I'm just saying, I am at a loss as to how we actually get positive action here.
Okay.
Go on, Clive. Go on, Claire.
So has everybody spoken except me and Julian? Or have I missed anybody other than you? Julian, are you going to volunteer your lifestyle choices?
Thanks, Claire. Good to leave it.
Margaret wanted to speak as well, actually.
Oh, Margaret, sorry, have I missed you out?
Have you already introduced yourself, Margaret?
You're muted, Margaret.
Yeah.
Sorry, I left you out. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, no, that was because I leapt out, went and had supper, and came back. And would you believe it was egg beans and chips?
It was what?
It was egg beans and chips. So the egg was the thingy in the wood pile there. But having said that, we eat a lot less meat in my household now, mainly because about 18 months, 2 years ago, I said, well, I'm not eating meat or fish anymore, and I'm going to try and cut out dairy, even though I love cheese, which is a difficulty. But if it's only a condiment, then actually maybe you don't need so many cows to produce it. But of course, the chef in the family now has to produce something that I will eat every day, even if it's only the fact that he's doing a roast meal. So there will be veg and maybe a little gravy for flavouring, even though I'm not interested in having the meat. So we can drag people towards a different diet, but we can't drive them. It's much easier to get a horse to be drawn to you than it is to push him, because they don't like being pushed. So yeah, and as far as the health aspects concerned, my father was brought up in Burma, where his father worked on the Burma Railway, and he was brought up on a curried vegetable diet, because that's what the local people ate. And he seemed to come out all right. But obviously they've had centuries and centuries of producing an effective curry vegetable diet. So yes, it's a case of, as Bill said, we have to learn how to do it better if we're going to do it healthily, and that's what Jackie was coming from as well. How do I push the door around to pick up what is good for my family? Yeah. Anyway, that's me. I'll shut up now.
Julian.
Okay, thanks. Yes. So just make one very quick comment before I explain my journey. That was about the issue of all these vegan processed products. But for me, well, this is part of my journey. Really, it's the end of it. But I mean, the basics are all you need. Like tofu, hummus, nuts, seeds, lentils. Protein isn't really a problem. So I'm not really sad to see all these ultra processed vegan sort of products wrapped in plastic and tasting like plastic disappearing, to be honest. But as long as the basics are all there and available at the right sort of price. So my journey, I grew up when my mum was vegetarian when I was born, but the sort of nurse persuaded her that she needed to eat meat to and feed me meat and stuff when I was young, and then after a little while she realized that was crap. And we all grew up strongly. I mean, there's so many people in the world that do grow up really strong without eating all that meat. It's certainly not. It's just a position. And then I sort of started working, and some of my colleagues in my house share sort of weren't vegetarian, and so I started joining in with them and thinking maybe it was good to build my muscles and all that sort of stuff. So I did that for a little while, and then realized that it was really just sort of beyond fat and all the rest of it. And after a little while, I realized I got all this visceral fat, and I didn't really want it. So anyway, I became first vegetarian, and then sort of cut out the cheese and eggs and stuff, mainly because of the various health reasons, which are well documented in many documentaries, including the Eating Ourselves to Extinction one, which is quite good. So that was my journey. And nowadays, I don't buy meat or dairy at all myself, but occasionally if it's going to waste, otherwise I would sort of eat it as long as it's fresh enough. But yeah, so I'm not fanatical about it, but that's my personal opinion. I also, in parallel, I sort of joined Friends of the Earth about 15 years ago, and they did some excellent campaigns explaining the ecological emergency and the way that livestock was affecting the ecology worldwide, and that was quite powerful as well. So yeah, that's my sort of journey.
Okay, right. So, Kate, did you put your hand up, or was that from before? You're muted, Kate.
Sorry, it's follow on, but you need to go, Claire, and explain your position.
Okay. Right. Okay. So I'm last, I think. Nobody else. Yes. So I mean, it's really interesting because everybody's on a journey, it seems to me. On my particular journey was growing up with my parents growing lots of vegetables. So vegetables have always been strong in my life. That's what, Bye, Andrew. Thanks for coming. Thanks. So vegetables were always a very large part of our diet because my parents grew a lot of the vegetables. We went vegetarian, and I went vegetarian for a while on the night that Channel 4 started, and my husband's been vegetarian ever since then because there was a documentary about factory farming, in which he went, I'm not going to eat this anymore. So he's been vegetarian, or rather pescatarian, whatever you like to call it. He does eat fish, but he's certainly not eaten meat. So that means that as a family, we've eaten very little meat. I'm not completely vegetarian, but I'm more, if you like, probably more vegan than he is, or veganish than he is. And obviously my journey is more about the climate issues and also about pollution issues. So opposite to Bill, which is quite interesting, I would occasionally still eat some meat and occasionally have fish and chips as a treat. But I do not eat any chicken products that I can avoid, because the amount of the link between chicken farming and pollution, river pollution, is really strong. I do eat eggs occasionally, so there being a cake or something like that, but normally we don't eat very many eggs at all, so it's about keeping that down. But I was brought up not to have any waste, so if somebody's got a bit of leftover, and my son's got his great big fried pile of meat and his black pudding's left over, I will eat it, to contribute to my own iron health or whatever you. Kate will be pleased to hear. So I don't like waste, so I would eat the leftovers. So I used to do that a lot when my children were small. Oh, I don't want that to go to waste. I'm interested in what you say, Jackie, because bringing up the children I found really difficult. They go off to parties, and I remember a vegetarian family from when my children were small, and it was a rather miserable sort of thing for them, because they'd turn up and they'd say, "Oh, we're not. Oh, that looks nice, but we're not allowed to eat this, and we're not allowed to eat that." And I thought, oh, I don't really want to put my children through that. I've lost something on my sound. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll carry on talking. I might have something wrong with my headphones for a minute. So I didn't want to put them through that. So they grew up, but again, we didn't have much meat in the house. More recently, one thing I do is I always try and eat vegan when I'm out, unless it's fish and chips, and I know exactly what it is. Because one of the issues is, for me, the absolute lack of control we have over anything that you eat in a restaurant. Where's it come from? Knowing where my food comes from is very important. I go down the market and I look and I see, so I know where everything comes from. I mean, it might be coming from Morocco because it's a Satsuma, but I look, and I want to know where it's coming from. In a restaurant, you don't know where it's coming from. You don't know, particularly if you're eating meat or chickens, where's it come from? Has it come? Julian was telling me earlier, and I looked up, and he's right. The amount of chicken that's coming from China. What sort of standards, animal welfare standards or health control standards with that. So so that's where I am, creeping around, eating up people's leftovers. However, we've had a big change in our lives, because we've got Ukrainian refugees with us, and their diet is completely different to ours, and it's really high on eggs and cheese. Our boy is, ultra processed food was made for him. So we've been trying to it's a bit of a war with them, Oksana trying to make us more like her, and us trying to make them more like us. And we are getting our little chap to eat a lot more vegetables. And when he arrived, he does eat vegetables. He even eats something green, which is peas. He'll eat something. So that's been an eye-opener. It's been an eye-opener in the field of recycling. That's a sort of foreign territory. And concerns about animal welfare, and no concerns about animal welfare at all. I think if you're coming from a culture where you've just escaped a war, you're not going to care what is happening to a chicken, which I fully understand. So there's all that, and catering for other people, and having to accept that I've got to cook for them something that they might want to eat, or at least the boy might want to eat. So that's been really difficult, actually, and in terms of compromises. So that's where I am. So shall we move on to what we were going to then do, which is what we might call the debate side of things. And just to recap, I think it's interesting that in the range of people who are interested in this issue sufficiently to log on to this meeting, I don't think we've got anybody who isn't going on that journey towards more meat-free. Was there anybody? Or going towards something? We might all be doing slightly different things for slightly different reasons, but we're all kind of going in the same general direction. Would that be right? In which case, what is it that we as a group could do to share with other people where we are, because we're in a bit of a bubble, aren't we, as to our thoughts and feelings about it. But what could we do relative to the rest of Wiltshire? So that's and the ordinary people who are going about their lives just picking up whatever from the supermarket shelf. What is it that we could focus on? Derek, you want to?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I've got to go in a minute anyway. Basically, from my position as a Wiltshire councillor, I can obviously ask questions of full council and things like that, so I can address things at a Wiltshire council level. But probably more significantly, what I think is it's you've got on the one hand you've got the here we're talking about how we as a group, and I'm afraid to say I'm sorry, but I'm actually more interested in what we can actually do, really, and that comes down to whether or not we can influence people to bring them to reduce their, as I think Kate was saying in particular. I agree entirely with what you've been saying, Kate. There's at that level, so the demand side of things, and then there's the supply side of things, where I think we need to be basically finding good practice from farmers and being able to promulgate that out to our local farmers. And I have contact with quite a lot of local farmers, so that's something that I can do personally, and I think that that's really, from my perspective, what I'd like to do: finding best practice for farmers and basically trying to encourage people to reduce the amount of consumption of meat. But we've got to be, as I think other people have said, we've got to be a bit more subtle about this, in the sense that buying an avocado that comes using large amounts of resources in a country that needs those resources for other reasons, and then shipping it halfway across the world onto your plate is, I'm afraid to say, not necessarily. It might be vegetarian, but it's not good for the climate. So we've got to have some well thought through points here, and we obviously can't blast those at people all in one go. So perhaps, rather like other people do, just find some top tips for people to be able to, on the one hand, reduce the carbon emissions associated with their eating, and secondly, to improve their diet at a personal perspective, which also helps the environment. Thank you.
Bill.
Yeah, I was just going to come back to Derek. Derek, if you have contact with a number of farmers, could you somehow have a session like this with them to talk about how they perceive this as a, because they'll be driven at the other end, i.e. the supply chain end, of what they want to be able to supply something so they can make a living. And Jackie's already said they've got this barrier that the supermarket is saying, well, I can't sell that because they'll make a profit. So why would farmer deliver it?
Well, we've got another aspect to what you're talking about, is the fact that there are quite a few of the local farmers that deliver dairy into the likes of Cadbury, and Cadbury are demanding of them that they meet certain standards. So the question is, are they able, either from that, to help us to find good practice? But I'm sure they're already doing this. The question is, do we have people that can pick up on this and promote it? I don't think necessarily the farmers are the issue here. I think their only problem is basically making a living out of it. They are obviously going to do whatever they can to, so long as it doesn't cost them their jobs, they will want to do whatever they can to deliver, because it's in their interest to do so.
May I come in here? I think that's a really good point, Derek. I mean, I think the farm visits I've done, where I've had my eyes opened to a very different farming system from what I'm used to, is I asked the farmer, who now is growing grain to provide gas to Portsmouth, not food, it's gas. I asked him why he couldn't grow peas, lentils, the whole of the pea family. So the idea of the beef-eating British came out of the Napoleonic Wars, where you did in the Navy, we were trying to fuel the Navy, very high calories, 5,000 calories to keep a sailor going under those conditions. And beef was a nice concentrated thing you could put in a barrel, stop it going off, and we had a lot of beef. But before that, it was peas pudding hot, peas pudding cold. We were a big legume eating nation. They can grow peas here on chalk. It actually works very, very well. Problem is, they can't sell it. Now, I'm buying my peas and my lentils from black turtle beans from Ethiopia, and God, they need them. My lentils are coming from India. God, they need them. My soya in my tofu, because I'm a tofu eating literati, is coming, and I'm not quite sure where from, but it probably is North America. And yet, this country is getting wetter and hotter and ideal conditions for growing legumes, and our farmers can't sell it. I would love to know a little bit more about that food chain. Who are the corn merchants? How does it get merchandised to the processors? How do the processors get it to the supermarkets, like Jackie's problem? I just want to buy lentils. I just want to buy lentils grown in England, rather than shipping them halfway across the world, even if it is by ship. So for me,
can
Derek,
I just,
that's what I would really like to understand, is what are our farmers up against? Because it just seems bonkers.
Can I just mention, Kate, that there is a lot of work going on legumes, actually, and I believe, if my memory serves me right, that we just reached the stage where a haricot that can be grown in this country has been developed that will hopefully work in our climate, so that we can have our own, we can have our own baked beans, and other peas and beans are being developed. But of course, in some cases, it's as a substitute for soya to feed to animals, because we don't want to import soya from South America and all the rest of it. So with that caveat, there is a lot of work, I think, going on legumes. Yeah. Can I just say something that I meant to say earlier, and I think is relevant. We all agreed we must tread carefully about telling people, lecturing people, and all that shit. However, in my lifetime, diets have changed enormously, absolutely gigantically. I never knew what a pizza was growing up. I never even heard of a pizza. I never had one until I was whatever. When a huge impact on my life was when my brother got married when I was about 11, and somebody came into our lives from Gateshead, actually, and we had Chinese food. I've never had a Chinese meal in my life. So we eat Chinese food, we eat Indian food. I never had any of that when I was growing up. So I think our diets have changed enormously, and people are willing to try new foods and so on. I think as a country, we're much, especially in contrast to my Ukrainians, who are very sort of conservative in what they will eat and don't have anything with spice, anything out of the ordinary. I think people in this country are very willing to try new things, actually. But what they're not willing to do is to spend a lot of time cooking or a lot of time on their food. We're used to importing, and I think that's a legacy of empire, that we were used to having a lot of easy stuff came in that made life easy for us.
Can I just say one thing? I've got to go, I'm afraid.
Oh, okay, Derek.
What I was going to say is that that basically, we know that Wiltshire Council are going to have to take on food waste. Okay,
Yeah.
we know that you can add food waste into biomass plants. Okay, and we know that you can use the output from biomass plants. You can burn the methane to create energy, but you can then use the carbon dioxide to pump into greenhouses and so on, which ups the level of carbon dioxide, which improves the efficiency of the growth. What we need to do is to come across good practice and so on that stacks up by itself to being of benefit. Okay, where we're not asking people to become part of a religious movement. We're asking them to just use a bit of rational common sense to move forward, and asking farmers to do the same.
So really,
Come
just to
there.
summarise before you go, Derek, that what you'd like to see, suppose you go onto the land use topic group, you want to see some little videos or something about people who are doing good stuff in Wiltshire, just, you know, just as purely practical things. Is that what you'd like to see?
I want to see practical stuff. You know, I'm, you know, I think the fatal thing is, and this is where people have this objection. They think you're pushing some religion down onto them. You know, and the point is, we need to take all that kind of, you know, we're a mystical group that that are well ahead of the game on this, and just say it makes just jolly good sense.
Look, can I come in there?
Really?
Because I think there is a very practical example that's coming up that responds directly to that. I've been having conversations with a company called Crappers, who are actually a waste recycling company just outside Wootton Bassett. And they are a remarkable company in that you may have come across them actually. They do a huge amount of recycling of the waste stream. They're commercial operators, so they don't take domestic waste. But one of the things they're looking actually doing is linking it all to the food process in exactly the same way that Derek was talking about. They actually take the methane off the landfill, they run it in a combined heat and power plant, they take the power off that to run their operation, and the heat then, they're going to be using that to actually heat greenhouses, and the greenhouses are actually going to be sitting on the old landfill site. So they're actually inflatable greenhouses. And the idea they actually want to do there, they're inflatable because of the landfill still differentially settles over time. So they're actually looking to grow food all year round using heat, carbon dioxide, and the electricity for LED lighting for plants, vegetables, fruit, the whole thing. They can actually do quite exotic stuff. And they're actually looking to grow enough to supply the local area, which is Wootton Bassett, Malmesbury.
Tony, could you have you got any contact details for them?
Yeah, if you look up Sustain,
of the group?
Yeah, it's called. I mean, maybe the group could do a site visit because they're very keen to show what they're doing there. They had a public
on that score. I'm organising at the moment a number of site visits for Wiltshire councillors and parish councillors and so on to the likes of, you know, wind farm, biogas, and Bath and West Community Energy. So I'd be more than happy to add that to my you know, my offering, and try and get, you know, Wiltshire Council really behind these schemes, because obviously some of them require planning permission and so on and so forth. So you know, it's helpful if we can wrap these things together.
Yeah. Okay, I'll put it in the chat.
Great. Thank you. Okay,
Right.
I'm sorry, I've got to go now.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Oh, thanks
nice
for
meeting
coming,
you all.
Derek. Yes, nice to talk to you. It was great.
Thanks. Bye.
Good luck tomorrow, Derek.
Thank you.
Can I say something, Claire?
Yes, of course.
I must say, a couple of years ago, when you took us to that farm, or we went to that farm, I think it was Avebury Way. It was sort of like north of. Anyway, it was north.
Yes,
from,
I know. Don't ask me what it's called this time of night.
It was an eye opener. It was brilliant. It really was, and to learn from somebody that was trying so hard, and also to say that I was raised and born in Cardiff. But my parents had a greengrocery business. And in those days, I was after the war and food was very short. And I would often go with my father to actually pick the actual goods in order to bring them back to his business, his shop. And it was hands-on in those days. And then, to cut a long story short, when I was at university, I decided I needed to lose weight, and I eat meat, grow thin. And in fact, the university got in touch with my parents saying, we're very worried about her. She's gone down to past under 6 stone. And that was just purely eating meat. I've never done that since, I tell you. So it's learning from you today has been just wonderful, and it doesn't necessarily be religious or anything like that. It's getting the right mindset. I mean that,
and the right sort of message. I mean, one message I'd like to give out, which I think is probably very ill-advised, is to say, when people say, "Oh, well, you can't be told what to eat," and of course you know, our greatest period as a nation, the Second World War, apparently, if that's what you think, was entirely, you know, entirely governed by the government deciding how we were going to eat, deciding what the farmers were going to plant, telling everybody to plough up this and dig up the gardens, and the government decided exactly what we were going to eat. And you know, we are in an emergency now, but I think that's something that I shouldn't say, because I don't think that would be very popular or well received to think in current times that would, I don't think that, I'd like to say that message, but I don't think it would go down at all well. But I think it's true. I think we were very well fed, we were very well nourished, and someone was sitting there saying, how much, you know, fats and oil are they getting? It should be 3 ounces or 4 ounces and all the rest of it. So the idea that we can't be interfered with is not historically true at all. But I don't think that's messaging that we could do now, probably, personally. Julian, I'm just concerned, are we answering the questions we should be answering at this point, do you think? We're coming up, it's 7:20.
Yeah, I mean, Bill maybe did an excellent job of, sorry to bounce, but yeah, of formulating the questions. I think you sort of hit on the fact that we're all on the journey anyway, so the main thing is to think about how we can communicate about it to people. So what Bill had put was how to communicate the issue of changing diets while supporting farmers and producing our food and supporting farmers producing our food and earning a living. So yeah, it is all about, I think we are talking about how we communicate the issue, but maybe we can sort of start to extract a few points. And one of the other things I was sort of hoping we might start to do is start some sort of working group, a bit like the Green Open Homes thing, but a sort of green eating thing, or you know, we might even combine the two at some point with having sort of, you know, sustainable snacks at Green Open Homes. But anyway, but you know, some sort of project that we can do which would help us in a sort of major way communicate with all the parish councils, all the, you know, all the big organizations and employers and all these sorts of things. A thing that we could invite people to be involved in that would help us communicate this, step up our game in a level.
Earlier on today, we were Julie and I were talking, and Bill, and one of the ideas we had at that stage was to actually use the Green Open Homes as a model to allow people to allow us to do what we've done already this evening, which is to explain the journeys we're in and how we manage. But we would need people to perhaps be prepared to open their lives to that extent, to the extent we have to each other this evening, to say on our topic group website, so that people can go on and say, what are the difficulties of eating this way, or what are the difficulties of shopping that way, or whatever. And I think if you were going to do something like that, you'd have to do it by type of family, because, you know, looking at us, we're not well, Jackie, you're the exception. You know, it's all right for us if you're retired with plenty of time to do the strange things we do, but we need to think, how is the average person or the average family? What suggestions could we make? How could we share? How could someone who's in that situation? So that's what I'd like to do. I'd like to find some younger people, or people who have a family who are going on the same journey that we've been talking about this evening, willing to talk and share that as to how they manage, what, you know, just practically shopping, menus. How do you how do you feed your family if you want to live in this way? How do you actually practically get from where you are to where you want to be?
Yeah. I mean, I would just comment that one of the sort of good initiatives to do this is the January, and I sort of put a note about that in the January meeting. It's slightly unfortunately named because it sort of begins with vegan, but it's about reducing meat and dairy. But everyone leapt on it and said, "Oh, you can't, we should go vegan," and so we had to rethink it a little bit. But it is a very good program, and the very strange fact about it is there then came out a campaign funded by what used to be called the Meat Marketing Board, and it's now called the AHDB or whatever it is, Agricultural Development Board. It's funded by a levy from the industry, and that was called Eat Balanced. But what it was effectively doing was promoting meat, and to veg, is promoting meat. It's supposed to be an antidote to January. So it was amazing the way that happened. So, but I think we somehow need to sustain something like the Veganuary thing, which is a very good organised approach to doing
it. So I'm not sure if I've got. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Jackie. Yes. Yeah.
Interestingly, my current boss at Waitrose used to be the boss of Veganuary, but it's actually gone down in popularity, I think, recently. It used to be maybe 2 or 3 years ago. It used to be very like growing and growing every year, but I think it's maybe reached its peak, which I'm not entirely sure where that is, but it's sort of vaguely interesting. But I used to live in London, and in Transition Town Tooting, we had a Vegetarianuary campaign because we thought people weren't maybe ready for Veganuary. But
Vegetarianuary
Facebook group, people sharing lots of recipes.
Yeah,
we sort of felt slightly not quite there yet, but it was people really got behind it and shared a lot of recipes and went out for dinner and things in local places where they could get vegetarian food, and it was it was quite a successful thing.
So is that a model then? Where you have clubs, and you go around to everybody cooks in turn or something like that, or you share how you eat. Because I think one of the problems with Veganuary is a lot of the vegan products are expensive, aren't they? They're not cheap, I don't think. No, processed ones. I don't mean things like lentils. I mean stuff like vegan burgers. The same as actually a lot of processed food is quite expensive, to my way of thinking, of all sorts of varieties. So if you're just going to pick up a pack of burgers, vegan burgers, I think they are expensive. But would you disagree, Julian?
I would say that they're not the solution at all. These processed vegan products. I think some things like falafels and things like that.
Sorry, like what?
Falafels.
Oh, falafels, yes. Yeah. We want to the falafel eating wokarati, then, are we now?
And those are fine. But some of these products that have come out recently, I just think they're so processed, and
I think we're struggling to find a direction here. It is incredibly difficult. You think about the January and it was a thing, and things tend to disappear after a while. And I guess the other problem, of course, is that the economy has changed so dramatically over the last 3 or 4 years that people are finding it more and more difficult to, if you like, jump on that sort of thing. So we'll try that for a bit, even if it is a bit more expensive. I think that the amount of effort that goes into providing something like that and keeping it going, it must be incredibly difficult. yeah, so because financially it is difficult to do on an ongoing basis. And lots of bits come out of this meeting, I think, and I don't think there is a magic bullet. There isn't one, because there's all sorts of things we've got to address. Tony's talking about crappers and what they're doing with our waste, which is a really good thing. But from a consumption perspective, that is not, I wouldn't say irrelevant, because it's very relevant, but it's the other end of the process of dealing with food, isn't it? I mean, it's a full circle, because it actually it's helping create food again. But it's not telling people. I mean, you could almost say, well, we should be throwing more waste into your food bin, because that actually crappers can take it, or somebody like crappers can take it and turn it into food again. So it's a virtuous circle. And I'm not saying they shouldn't do it. I think it's brilliant, and I'll talk to Tony about it another time. But we tried to set something like that about 15 years ago, and it off another type of piece of equipment. But and it was very successful in terms of tomato growing. So that end is great, and it's how do you get the general population grasping the fact that we just need to change slowly or quickly or whatever our use of things. It's so subtle. So it really is so subtle, all of this, in terms of food, and everyone likes something different in their diet, and it's not as easy as stop driving or ride bikes or whatever. They're sort of black and white things. This is a really, really multicolored. I say it's grey. It's multicolored all the way through, and it's been a really interesting meeting, but I'm not sure yet we've hit a point which I say, oh yeah, let's do 3 or 4 of those things, and everyone's set up, yeah, let's do it. I think so
Bill,
I don't know how we move this forward.
Bill, I put some suggestions into the chat, actually, of things that are going on. So, just added to.
Well done.
Yes, yes, I should have said I've just been looking at the chat, and there's suggestions coming through. But welcome Dorothy, who's got her hand up. Dorothy.
It was just to say, I can't quite remember what it's called, but there is a sort of thing that's been promoted through social media at the moment to do with promoting a balanced diet. And I know there's been some concerns that it's a bit of a pushback to try and make sure that it's being funded by the meat industry. And it's to try and make sure that that's the message that's got across. Now, it's not that I'm necessarily particularly against it, as long as it's got the less meat and it is balanced. But I think there's quite a worry that there's funding coming in, and it is actually a rather disguised pushing the meat industry. And much of anyone else has heard it or come across it.
I think Julian was mentioning it actually
earlier on. Sorry, I was saying to join
yes,
you.
No, I think you were mentioning it, weren't you, Julian?
Yeah. So this Eat Balanced campaign funded by
That's the thing. Yeah.
So that is funded by a levy on the industry, which is predominantly dairy farming, or in the UK, the industry is, I think, the largest proportion of it is livestock farming, although obviously there's a lot of cereals as well. But yeah, I mean that is the trouble. People convert it, convert the message about it's a good idea to eat less meat and dairy into, oh, you shouldn't be telling people to be vegan, but we're not. But they set up a straw man and then knock it down. And that's what they were doing with that. Is my view.
Okay, so I think we're sort of getting up to 7:30, and so there's various ideas here. What the ideas that Derek suggested about making contact with farmers, which I think has been a theme, quite a lot of theme going back in the land use group, but he seems to be a good person to talk to about that. So what about ideas for, has anybody got ideas? Because I came up with some ideas just to throw into the room and you can talk about them. So we could have an eating green event, something like that. We could have on the website, we could have information on your local foods. Could we build up the website so that if you want to know where your local producer of tomatoes is or whatever, that you can access it via our website. We could have people such as our good selves on the website just saying what our journeys are and how the sort of diets we have and the things we enjoy or the things we don't enjoy and what we find difficult, just honest accounts to share. My particular thing, lobbying and promoting local horticulture, where government is woefully lacking in its support of people who want to produce local salads, tomatoes, and all the rest of it. There was supposed to be a horticultural strategy came out, but the government decided not to do it. There is a lot of concern about the level of production that there's going to be in the future if the government isn't more supportive to local horticulture. Kate, you're on mute. Oh.
Can I just say that my family are Booths, the supermarket in the north of England, and Booths have got a very, very definite policy of selling and promoting their local farmers. All the fruits and vegetables, bar the citrus fruit, sold in booths, are grown in big greenhouses, which are fed by CO2 and heat from the power industry in the Cheshire Valley.
That's interesting. Oh, I think I might have heard something on the radio about that.
On the radio about that.
Yeah. Mm. As circular systems, as was being described.
Exactly. Yeah. But they have really, really focused very hard on, yes, their food miles, but also it's about supporting local farmers and making sure that people buying the vegetables are connected to where they came from. It's a policy. Now, can I say that one of the meat I do eat is venison, because we've got such a problem with rogue deer across the country that we need to be the prime carnivore to control them. And it is a very good meat, and it just needs eating up. So I'm afraid I do buy the local venison. Right, I'm going to have to go, folks. I agree. It's been a fascinating conversation. I'm glad that I'm part of the Bean Eating Local Arbitrator of the Wiltshire Climate Alliance Group.
Great.
Let me know what more I could do. So thanks, everybody. Take care.
Okay. Thanks, Kate. Thanks for coming. So, does anybody want to wrap it up with concrete suggestions? I've made my suggestions. Anybody else want to make your suggestions?
From a kind of lobbying perspective, I don't know what aspects of this Wiltshire Council or any of the sort of smaller councils have control over this, but if they have, if they write guidelines for public procurement of food, then that they have that power. Or if it's, I guess I don't know what they do with farmers, but that might be worth looking into if there's something we can lobby kind of tangible and concrete that Wiltshire Council actually has some control over that could make some difference in this. I don't know if they have any kind of public health messages that they do.
Yeah,
to change that.
They do, Jackie. I think the other thing about local farmers and lobbying is that the local farmers lobby Wiltshire Council. So you'll find tomorrow at the full council meeting, there is a motion being put forward to ask people to support meat and dairy farmers in the council meeting. So, there's been lobbying going on by the dairy and farm industry to actually lobby the local council that way around. So, it can go both ways. I'm not sure how much support Wiltshire Council would be prepared to give to support changes in the way farms work. Don't know. We've never debated it with them. Might be worth a discussion. We've got a meeting. Supposed to be having a meeting with them in a few weeks. So,
okay.
I mean, I think one thing that needs to be clear is there's the sort of the consumption side and the production side, and sometimes we sort of muddle them up a little bit. But I mean, it's the consumption side where we can particularly influence the community and work with councils and things to influence the community. And then on the production side, well, I mean, that'll be driven by what people consume overall globally. And, you know, maybe we need to let it sort itself out.
Yeah, it's that it's consumption is a driver, because if you change consumption habits, then the farmers will follow.
Yeah,
I think they will. They need a market. If the market's saying I want this, then they will actually supply it.
yeah. I think
I don't think there's a farmer out there that would say I'm going to go forward with this and make a market. The market comes to them and says I'd like more meat, or I'd like more of this, or I'd like more of that. Maybe I'm wrong, but I just feel that it's the middle bit, you know, is driving what is produced, I think. Although obviously there's a lot of marketing in it as well, because the big food production companies will be thinking of whiz ideas that they can sell stuff into the market, and then persuading farmers to produce it as well. But it's consumers that make a market. If they don't buy it, Jackie's already said, if you don't buy it, you don't sell it. You know, they won't sell it.
Yeah,
it's difficult because we want to get the message that you buy much less meat, but being supportive of the farmers, because we need them, that it's much better quality and that it is at a proper price, but you're eating less. But it's really hard to get that across with people noticing the price of meat, thinking, oh, rather than it's part of eating less and having other things, and it not to be come across as anti-farmer. It's a very tricky one, because as you say, it's the production and the consumption. Don't know what the answer is.
Yeah. I think one of the important things is, especially in light of the council motion that's coming along, needs to be some sort of messaging policy, which is that our messaging will take into account the climate and ecological emergencies.
Yes, and I think because one of the things the council they're asking the council to do is for the council to themselves to use more dairy and meat. Are they not?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the main thing in the motion was that the motion is that they will not say anything against people eating meat, which is totally against policy. But the policy isn't there. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah. I suggest, Claire, that we have there's a time to reflect on all of this. We need somehow to come back together again and say, okay, let's try and do this thing, because I don't usually struggle with finding ways forward, because I like to push things forward, but with this, I think there's so many avenues we could go down. But well, with two things. One, we have to have a really good plan to go down there, and the other is we need some people to help us, because
that's why I'm more concentrated on things we could put on the website, because to me
I agree. I think the website thing is a good idea. People can add to that.
To build up a resource bank on the website was my thinking about it. That seemed more practical to me.
And Jackie,
and even to the point where we're having meals described in some way or other, or people who are creating a meal that isn't, that the nutrition in that meal can be described, or whatever, something that enables people to look at it and say, oh yeah, I can see that would work, and I don't see why we shouldn't do that sort of thing. Looking for something different and cheap and easy to prepare and those sort of things. And I think it would be a really good thing to do, and I also love to think that we could get some people producing vlogs about what they're doing. So I'm preparing a meal for my family, and this is what we're doing, and who the children are having this because of this, and it would be great if people could do that. But you've got to find the willingness of people to get engaged with that sort of thing. That's really tricky as well. I mean, we've had difficulty enough trying to get people to do a vlog about their green open homes, and we would have thought they'd been really proud of them, but they're all very quiet. All 38 of them.
Really?
Well, no, there's at least 2 of us who don't want, but.
Thank you, Jackie, for your suggestion in the chat. I just saw you show a Zoom cook-along. I think that's a really brilliant idea. And also,
wow,
thank you, Jackie, for, I mean, we met at Devices, of course, and I said we were going to try and get a food group working, and apologies that it's taken so long, but this was sort of our attempt to sort of start something off. So thank you for coming. And there was another lady there whose name I need to try and dig out, but I don't know if you happen to remember. But, you know, she was also keen on getting involved. Anyway, I'll try and dig that out. And I hope that we can do the sort of things that Paul was talking about.
Okay, so shall we wrap it up there for the moment? I like the, I was just, before we do though, is the, what was, I just noticed it, oh, the, sorry, I can't see what I, oh, the Green Grub Club, Margaret. What's that?
Oh, is it really good?
Yeah, I'm not actually involved in organising it, but basically they it's a fairly small group, and they get together once a week, and they prepare a meal, and it was really designed, I think, to help people who are struggling to prepare nutritious meals and affordable meals, and yeah, so Graham is the man who knows about it, because every time somebody comes up and queries whether, you know, whether it's a goer to join the Green Grub Club, he hops in, because
Graham who?
Graham Martin.
Graham Martin, okay.
Yeah, he's the Sustainable Devices Chair.
Yes, yes.
But he he's also involved with the Green Grub Club, as are a couple of other people. I have to admit that that's all.
When do they do this Green Grub Club?
Sorry?
When do they do the Green Grub Club?
Yeah, it's there's a local place where family type groups can go, and Graham knows, and he's on your mailing list somewhere.
Yeah.
So it would be, it's better to ask somebody who knows rather than somebody who's been standing.
I'm just sort of thinking that's the sort of thing where you could make a video, you know, and that you could have somebody talking about it as, you know, something that's already established like that. And that's something we could put up on the website. I
don't know how it came about, but I think, as I say, it was to do with families who were struggling to be able to feed their people healthily, and really didn't have much in the way of the right sort of skills. I don't know. But I was not involved with organising it, because I don't do cooking. But no, it's definitely not my skill set.
Ask the chef in the family to do it.
Yeah,
right.
Well, he doesn't know about the Green Grub Club because he wouldn't be interested.
Okay. Right. I think we need to wrap it up there, because